What you're watching is a very special acting class.
There's somebody at the bus stop.
That group on stage is working on an improv drill, one meant to teach observational awareness. And that man is a police officer. Officer Anthony Watkins is with the Savannah, Georgia Police Department. And for him, this is training.
It was stressful. And I was sweating by the time I was done. As police officers, we're always taught to be that authority and that figure that is taking charge on scene and wanting to move it in one specific direction. I think as far as what I'm learning today, this is just not my comfort zone, but even being in this class for a short time is just pushing me to work and operate in a way that I would never have thought before.
His training comes amidst a restless week in America.
Shut it down!
A week where yet another police officer, Kim Potter, stands accused of shooting a black man, 20-year-old Daunte Wright. Potter was arrested and booked into jail today, charged with second-degree manslaughter, released later on bond.
There are two levels of policing in this country, one for blacks and one for whites.
The pain and anguish, the outrage over repeated incidents of minorities dying at the hands of police, at times during calls that began as nonviolent incidents, is causing police departments all over the nation to self-reflect, re-examine, and in some cases, retrain how their officers handle situations with the public.
You said that most officers get about 50 hours of training, firearms training, but less than 10 hours in de-escalation training.
The reason why that's problematic is because when they're in the field, they encounter the exact opposite. 9 out of 10 calls for service have nothing to do with violence at all. We are oftentimes seeing police officers escalate situations themselves. So what we have to do is to create training that speaks more to social interactions, speaks more to officers creating what they call time and distance so that they can make more objective decisions.
For Officer Watkins, attending this class known as Trauma Drama enhances his training, helping him better communicate and better understand his community.
Once you have that personal connection, it kind of creates a bond where a more peaceful resolution could be achieved. We're going off-roading today.
It's all part of the Savannah Police Department's new behavioral health unit, which launched in the aftermath of George Floyd's death.
We looked at some of our statistical data, specifically back in 2019. We responded to about 3,700 calls for service that were not related to criminal acts, but were related to individuals in some type of mental crisis situation. What was really needed for those calls for service was for those individuals to be evaluated by a clinician, to be connected with resources, and for them to have the opportunity to have some type of follow-up plan put in place to reduce recidivism for those types of calls.
The unit is made up of 2 non-uniformed, unarmed officers and a licensed clinician. The choice of attire, a deliberate one.
We're in a more laid-back uniform that is kind of designed to make people feel more comfortable. The uniform that I'm wearing today is what I wear on a daily basis. We're trying to stand apart from the rest of patrol as we're trying to get there and calm the situation down and get people the help they need.
The Savannah PD says creating the behavioral unit has allowed them to enhance their service while reducing the need for unnecessary force.
Prior to having this behavioral health unit, you would take the person to jail. And now we have more options. And when we tell them that we're, taking a person in for treatment or taking a person to a mental health facility rather than jail, most often than not, they're pretty happy with that.
I think people are realizing that reform is no longer an appropriate word. And instead, we need to start thinking about transformation. What we've been doing over the past quarter century or so simply is not working to address the racial disparities that we see in policing.
If I'm afraid that I'm going to be murdered at every single second of the job, and I'm always operating in what they would call like code red, I'm always on high alert, that is toxic mentally, it's toxic physically, but it's also toxic to the profession of community policing. If I'm afraid of my neighbors, then I'm going to react fearfully.
Changing an officer's mindset is something Savannah Detective Patrick Skinner has been championing for years.
I think that the conversation has become more open and more urgent, I guess. There's an obvious need for police reform. A lot of departments are trying to make that.
Before rebasing in Georgia, Skinner served in the Middle East.
I was in the CIA for 7.5 years, stationed in the Counterterrorism Center.
His experience there left an impact, especially where their tactics came up short. When he returned to his hometown of Savannah and decided to become a police officer 4 years ago, he says he saw much of the same.
We wanted, to get the Sunni community on our side in Anbar Province, Iraq. I mean, that's impossible. But when I came home to Savannah and I started seeing that same rhetoric here, where, get the community on your side. We need the African-American community. We need the Hispanic community on our side. I could understand quickly that doesn't make any sense.
Skinner was outspoken in what he was seeing as a B-cop, quickly gaining public attention in his community and around the country, speaking out in articles and on social media about community policing and the importance of being a neighbor. In his department, he began introducing ideas like the importance of how officers use language, including the term civilians.
When you start dividing it in a language very structured, civilians versus cops, then it does an us versus them, even subconsciously, it's going to happen.
He also preaches rolling down the windows while driving around, something he learned to do in the CIA.
I wave to everybody, and it tells you he's engaged. I'm looking for the briefest connection. The windows down is an easy way to do that. You can hear everything, see everything. There are no small acts of kindness or connection, and we just need to not pass them up.
It's that view of your community as neighbors and not threats that Skinner hopes will become more and more a part of an officer's mindset and training, not just in Savannah, but across the country.
We have a warrior mindset that is taught, and it's taught a lot, with zero empathy, zero compassion, zero understanding, and the goal is compliance. I don't like that warrior mindset because, it's an us versus them, and it's a really aggressive us versus them. The consent of the community is how we have our job, and they have a say in how we do our job.
But as the nation grapples with another death, and yet another family is left to grieve, one can only wonder if measures like these are enough.
Law enforcement is like being a pilot or even being a physician. You have to be perfect. We need our law enforcement to be above reproach, and we also need to give them the resources to be able to get to that point.
But no one's perfect.
Yeah, no one's perfect. But this is the thing. There are certain professions where you pretty much need to be, because when you mess up, then someone loses their life.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.